Well, if you've watched the Fox 6 Blitz on Sunday nights, you saw our next guest filled in a number of times. Doug Russell from WSSP is on the line with us now. How are you, Doug?
I'm doing all right. How you guys doing?
Doing all right, partner. Did you see this one coming? I got up this morning. I mentioned I heard your voice tell me that Brett Favre is retiring. Your first reaction?
Just don't shoot the messenger, Pip. That's all I ask. I'm just reporting what we found out. Shortly after 8:15 this morning, we got a report that Brett Favre was retiring, and our day's been turned upside down, as has the entire state of Wisconsin's. You knew the decision was going to come down at some juncture because it had to. Don't forget, it took him, more than a month less to make up his mind a year ago. He made up his mind on February 2nd last year, and now it's March 4th. So you knew that the longer this was going on, the more I had a feeling that Brett Favre was not going to come back. And it just seemed as though, and I know you spoke with Mike Wickett, my morning show partner, earlier today, and I agree with him. I think that the weather got to him at the end of the season. He's a guy from down south in Mississippi, but at some point that's got to take its toll, and I think that it did on Brett Favre, and I don't think that he wanted to go through the rigors of another NFL season. I mean, he's going to be 39 in October, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, he looked miserable in that game and the Bear game at Soldier Field. Doug, I want to ask you about the way this came out. There's talk about some bad blood between the front office and Brett Favre, not showing enough love for number 4. And yet the Packers didn't get to announce this. It broke on foxsports.com. Do you read anything into that? Is that kind of a snub at the organization to say, I'm not even going to give you the benefit of announcing this?
Yes and no. I think that the way that this was announced was probably typical of Brett Favre. He's a guy who doesn't necessarily like a lot of fanfare. He's not a guy who necessarily needs the spotlight. I don't know that this was announced in the way that he had anticipated it being announced, but I don't know that it was a snub at the Packers organization, because he's going to be the face of the Packers organization, the face of this franchise for many, many years to come. He's going to be back next season when they retire number 4, and they put it up with the other greats of Packers lore, right up next to Reggie White's number, Bart Starr's number, and Ray Nitschke's number, Tony Canadeo's. He's not going to completely disappear off the face of the earth for the Green Bay Packers, so he's still going to be working with this organization, but we're not going to see much of Brett Favre. I don't think he's ever going to be on television. I don't think he's ever going to go into the coaching profession. But the way that the announcement was handled, I mean, it hasn't even technically been announced yet and won't be announced until the 3 o'clock news conference, except for the press release that Ted Thompson released earlier today. I think it's kind of typical of Brett Favre, and that's not meant as a swipe at Brett in any way, shape, or form. I just think that the way that Brett chose to handle this was kind of indicative of the way that he handled the media throughout his entire career.
And then Doug Russell, WSSP Radio, when they do make the announcement, they'll put number 4 up there on the rafters at Lambeau Field. He'll come out in the second half and throw 2 touchdown passes.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and Ted's question was spot on. But I think that's just Brett. I mean, he says things off the cuff, from the heart, and he doesn't understand that every word he speaks takes on an impact that none of us can truly relate to. And he says something to Al Jones, his friend in Mississippi, the writer, and then it becomes a big story. And that probably is the way. I think it had less to do, as you point out, with the Packer organization and any quote-unquote rift. He was in constant contact with Mike McCarthy, who said he had spoken to him a couple of days ago and anticipated a decision this week. So I think the way it came down, as you point out, is just Brett Favre. He's not going to call up, make it any big deal. It's just going to happen. And I think he probably is truly regretting the day, dreading the day, however soon that happens, when he has to come to Green Bay and make a formal announcement, because that's going to be extremely emotional.
Yeah, I mean, he's never really been comfortable in press conference settings. Doing the media thing isn't necessarily Brett's thing. It never has been. You can call him a throwback if you want, but I think he's one of those guys that wants to do his job, does it well. He's a completely different guy behind closed doors. I mean, that's the one overwhelming thing that all of his teammates that we've talked to today on the radio, and that I'm sure you guys have talked to on Fox 6 as well today, have found out. He's an entirely different guy behind closed doors when the media is not there. With his teammates, he's the practical joker of the team and has been for a decade and a half. And that's not necessarily the Brett Favre that we always see during press conferences. He's broken down in press conferences. He's done these press conferences because it's part of his obligation as the face of the Green Bay Packers. And he's never really complained about it, but you always had a sense that it wasn't necessarily his thing either. Look at how many one-on-one interviews Brett Favre does. He doesn't do very many unless the ones that are done by the Fox Network in preparation for the games. And that's just Brett being Brett.
You know, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, as they say, but can he unring this bell? I know the written denial, they say denial is not just a river in Egypt. A lot of people saying, no, he's going to settle down. He's going to look at all this and what he means and come back. Can you unring this bell, or can he come back?
Well, he can. I don't think that he will. I mean, we've never heard this from Brett Favre before. We've never heard, okay, I'm done. I'm retiring. I'm through with football, and I'm going to hang them up. This is the first time we've ever heard that. We've had rampant media speculation. It's been our jobs to have Tractor Watch, whether it was Tractor Watch 06, Tractor Watch 07, Tractor Watch 08. We've been doing this for a long time, but we've never heard from Brett Favre or his family or his insiders that this indeed was it. Can he unretire? Of course he can. Do I think he will? Absolutely not. I think he's done.
Doug, what do you take as a fan? Take away your microphone now and talk to us as a fan. When I say to you, Brett Favre, what goes through your mind and what's going on in your heart?
Sustained excellence. You know, the Green Bay Packers are very fortunate to have had not one, but two franchise quarterbacks, Bart Starr and now Brett Favre, two of the icons of the game. I mean, I was a sophomore or a junior. I think I was a junior at UW Oshkosh when Brett Favre first burst onto the scene. And there was a debate as to whether or not this guy should even have been worth a first-round draft choice, and that seems ludicrous at this point. And nobody thought that he was going to have the career that he had. Nobody thought that he was not going to relinquish the starting job for 16 seasons. Nobody thought that he was going to hold every major passing record when all was said and done. And for me, as a fan, take away covering him all these years as a reporter, but as a lifelong Packers fan, I'm just thankful that Brett Favre played on our team. He won this franchise, this state, this community. Packers fans everywhere, a lot of games. And for that, I think Packers fans should be eternally grateful. And when you look back on his career, the two words that come to my mind, sustained excellence.
I can't even tell you who the quarterback was when I was a junior in college. I knew you were young, but I didn't know you were that young.
And where do you think that puts me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Doug Russell from WSSP, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Bip.
See you, Doug.